Hey guys, Mike Toy with Bonsai Boise. So I've got this Dwarf Schefflera. I call him Sheffy. And he has started as he was part of a Schefflera clump. In fact, it was the first Schefflera clump I ever made. And he had a lot of potential. I ended up taking the clump apart because I was kind of new at bonsai at the time and bored and wanted to. And this is the one that survived, and it's come a long way. I've let it grow wild for the most part. So today he's going to get a major haircut in a new pot, much bigger, with room to grow. And we're going to take a look at these aerial roots and figure out how to sort all this out. So come with me, we're going to dig in, get dirty, and start trimming. Okay, so here he is. I'll give you a look at kind of where he came from. I believe I got him somewhere around 17, and then this is when I repotted it in 18. That's what it looked like when I took the clump apart. So it's kind of like a multi-trunk aerial root, exposed root kind of look. I don't know what style it really even is technically. Here it is about a year later, repotted it into a little bigger pot. There it is. Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures of how it got into the pot it's currently in from this, but this is a look at it then, so you can see it's nice and healthy. And here he is now. He's been in the greenhouse for about the past year and a half or so. And ever since putting him in the greenhouse, aerial roots just went wild, which is cool. I like it. I'm going to keep going with that look. In fact, the goal today is I want to preserve the aerial roots as much as possible, and just the rest of the roots as well, if possible. I imagine it's pretty root bound in there. And the pot that I'm going to be repotting him into, I'll show you in a second, is much bigger. It's the same style pot, but probably twice as big. It's funny, some of these arrow roots, like you could almost play it like a string. Others are very dainty. Roots coming out the bottom. It's outgrown this pot, to say the least. So here's its new pot. You can see it's much, much bigger. I'm no mathematician, but I'd say maybe twice as big, volume-wise. I really don't know. So the first thing I'm going to do is defoliate it. It's very healthy and vigorous right now. It's the middle of July, so it's really the perfect time if you're going to defoliate it to do it. I've noticed Scheffleras are they're very tough, very forgiving. They also tend to like it a little on the drier side. A little. It's kind of a myth that I believed for a long time, that these are tropical. It's not that they're tropical. I believe they're more desert than anything, really. Tropical trees are, they tend to like it much wetter conditions, where Scheffleras do not. So I think the confusion comes because Scheffleras do not like the cold. So that is what it has in common with other tropicals, is that they don't like cold. You're going to see some interesting dilemmas I'm in with some of these branches. They're a little taller than I would prefer them to be, but the reason that I'm sort of in a dilemma is because that's where a lot of those aerial roots are coming out of the very top part. So I'll take a second look at that. But as you can see there, I'm pointing out that these little black spots, I don't exactly know what that is. It happened when I put it in the greenhouse. I freaked out at first thinking, oh no, it's mold or something. But it's been like that for a year and a half at this point. It hasn't gotten any worse or better. It's just sort of like that. So I don't know what it is. And at this point, I think it's okay. Yeah, so back to the style of this. It is kind of interesting, at least to me. And I'm going to take off this wire here. It's been on there for at least 6 months. But yeah, the style is it's hard to tell right now in this frame, but it's kind of got this exposed root look. And all the exposed roots come up to this one main trunk, and then this one main trunk splits out into like 3 main trunks. So it's something between an exposed root, triple trunk bonsai. Because I like to complicate a very simple bonsai. I'm just going to spray these aerial roots to keep them nice and moist. After all, it's been in a greenhouse. It's kind of like if you were inside for a very long time and then somebody yank you out of bed and put you out in the harsh sun. I don't want to throw it into shock and burn up those aerial roots. So now I'm going to try and dig it out of this tiny little pot. Not sure what to expect, but I imagine it's in there pretty tight. Scheffleras are also kind of soft. Even the woody trunk there and the bark, it's really pretty soft. I mean, you can cut into it with not much effort with a fingernail even. So I'm sort of trying to be delicate with it and at the same time trying to yank it out of there. So I just wiggle it around and eventually, reluctantly, it pops out. There we go. So it's not completely root bound like I expected, but it's got some pretty healthy roots in there. It did have some dry spots in the soil, I noticed. I'm not overly concerned about it, I just sort of noticed. The fuller that canopy got and more aerial roots it got, I tried to water it more than some of the others in the greenhouse just because the more foliage, the more water they need. So I was surprised, if nothing else, that the soil was as dry as it was in spots. And it seemed to be just in certain spots too. So certain spots of the soil seemed to be a healthy dose of wet, whereas others were just very dry. So somehow or way the water worked into some kind of I don't know, some kind of like drainage system internally that followed a certain path and left certain spots dry, I guess. I don't really know what goes on in there. This was especially challenging when getting all the old soil out, because you can't exactly comb out the roots like you would other bonsai trees if you've watched other videos where people do that. So it really just took a long time of massaging it out of there and poking at it with chopsticks. So here it is. Kind of resembles like a beard and long hair to me. And from here I just sort of finesse those aerial roots out a little bit, because a lot of them were crisscrossing and crossing over the main trunk, which is okay on some bonsais. I can appreciate that style, but on this particular one I was trying to go for a little bit cleaner look of, you know, really just showing off that multi-trunk and having the aerial roots just come straight down as much as possible, or maybe just slightly angled, but not crisscrossing all over the place at least. Getting the new pot ready. By the way, I find these interesting circular pots, which I think might be meant to be succulent pots. I don't know. There's a place here in town in Boise that sells them occasionally. I don't really know what they are. I think they're made of brick, to be honest with you. It's not ceramic, because I've tried to drill extra drainage holes into it. I can't. My normal bits wouldn't go through it the way that it would go through ceramic. So it probably could. I just would have to get a masonry bit, which I didn't have. So yeah, it's a pretty tough pot. I've never broken one. I've left them outside all winter. None of them have ever broken, so they're tough. Trying to determine where I want the front of the pot to be. Kind of very similar, but that's the spot with the least amount of blemishes, so I'm going to go with this. It's almost comically frustrating trying to, again, unlike a normal bonsai tree where you situate it and you work the soil into the roots and make sure it's positioned right, this is a little different because you're doing all those things and at the same time trying to get the aerial roots in the spot you want it to be. So you're poking at it, trying to get the soil around, and the more you poke at it, one starts popping up somewhere else, and so then it's just kind of like, it's like herding cats, basically. You get one just right and two others pop out of place, so comically frustrating. Not really frustrating. I do enjoy doing this, so it's not as if it is not enjoyable. Do a little light trimming on some of these aerial roots. I didn't really want to trim the roots any more than I had to at the moment. Not on one of these kind of trees because they're a little wild and crazy. So let it be wild and crazy. And over time, if it gets too hard to manage and I can't keep those aerial roots positioned right and straight, then that's okay too. Styles can change and evolve with time. I rarely get too hung up on a style on any of my trees. I will say couple things about aerial roots that I've learned this past year. I live in the desert here in Boise, Idaho, and it's really, really hard, if not impossible, to achieve aerial roots on trees out here because it's just so dry. So I tried a whole lot of methods. I don't know. I just experimented around with a lot of different things. And what finally worked the best, believe it or not, well, a couple things. One, I've got a couple of little indoor greenhouses that you can get for 30 or 40 bucks. So those worked. And I've got one 3 by 3 by 9, so 9 feet long, 3 feet wide, 3 feet tall. That worked as well, to a little bit lesser degree. But what worked the absolute best was a clear plastic bag over it. The simplest, cheapest method you can think of. They're little gift bags that I got at the dollar store. There's 2 in a bag for $1. So 2 bags in a bag. So So I take one of those, throw it over any Schefflera clump or ficus or whatever you got, and in almost no time they just start growing these arrow roots out of every which direction like crazy. Now, I have not learned how to control that. So they pop out of places that you don't want them to pop out sometimes, and they don't pop out of places you do, and there seems to be no rhyme or reason. Sometimes it'll come out of hardwood, sometimes soft, sometimes at the very top, and like 10 of them will pop out of one spot at the very top of the tree, and other times down at the base. So I have now learned to control that. But the important part is that that's how you do it. Clear plastic bag. Water it well. Spray it down with a mister. Just squirt it with mist a whole bunch of times. Just get really nice and wet, and then put a clear plastic bag over it, and in almost no time it'll grow air, even in winter. Not as much or as fast in the winter, but it will do it. So I've got it as positioned as I can probably get it, or hope for at the moment. So now I'm going to give it a good watering. So it looks a little cleaner. I'm really curious to see how this is going to look once it grows back out. It's always fun when you defoliate a tree, because leaves just pop out of everywhere and you don't know what to expect. You're used to seeing it a certain way, and then it's kind of like a reset. It just resets the whole thing and grows out different ways. So I'm pretty excited about this one to see how it goes. So I'm filling in some gaps and some spots here. I was a little nervous about, I wanted to make sure that I got soil worked into the roots everywhere, because it was tough. That's not an easy root system to get it all worked into. But I think I got it. Now, back to these branches. I've got to make some hard decisions. And then once you do it, it doesn't seem so hard. Look, it looks better already, doesn't it? I feel that way pretty much every time. When I'm too nervous to make big cuts, I finally do it and I look at it and I'm like, yeah, that definitely looks better. I don't know what I was so afraid of. I do know why. I mean, we work so hard for growth, and for progress. And we get it. And then what do we do with it as soon as we get it? We cut it. Feels counterintuitive. At least for me. Especially in the beginning. But now that I've learned to just sort of take the plunge on big cuts, I'm almost always happy that I did. There's some times that I just can't, and it's more of a process. Like the one in the back left, I'm going to take it back a little bit, but you can see where the big arrow root is. I don't want to go any lower than that, which sort of limits me. So what you hope for in a case like that is you take it back as much as you can, and you hope that it back buds. And sometimes it takes a while. It's a process. It maybe doesn't back bud the way you want, or where you want, or at all. So you just have to kind of continue the process and eventually hope that it does. But this is pretty much where it's gonna be for now. I'm happy with it like this for now. Got it in a big pot with lots of room to grow. Defoliated it. It's going to bounce back all over the place. So really excited about the future of this one. So I'll keep you updated. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you who do and who like and subscribe. You can see updates on this and others. Feel free to leave any comments you've got on Scheffleras or any other tree. Happy to see it. Have a good rest of your day, everybody.